Okay, time for some stupid fun. One of the oldest things from a setting perspective in a Star Trek that is not a real place, the Rigel system. The Rigel system has been referenced in starting in the original unaired pilot all the way up to whatever the most recent season of Strange New Worlds is. Yeah, that is a whole lot. And as a result, the nature of the system is both poorly explained and over explained simultaneously. Like, you have a variety of things said to come from Rigel that are, well, they exist. That's about it, honestly. Some of the native flora and fauna, might actually be something you would find interesting. And this is one of those things that's comes up with Rigel when you look into it, is that most usages of Rigel are in fact actually just a offhand mention. Most usages are not actually anything that is carefully thought out or anything like that. They just like name drop. It's like, oh, hey, this thing came from Rigel. Boom, done. That's it. And so let's look to see specific examples. So there are planets in the Rigel system numbered from 1 to 12. Rigel II is one that we have seen sort of, kind of. Yeah, no one's ever actually been there on screen. Um, Two women from Dr. McCoy's imagination of something that well, we don't really know exactly where he got this imagine imagined idea from. Were from a Rigel 2. They're performers on Rigel 2. Yeah, we don't actually know whether or not they're meant to be humans or Rigelians, because of the fact that one thing that gets established is that humans live on colonies in the Rigel system. The Rigelians, uh, and that's a plural in terms of races. There's at least three races from the Rigel system who are spacefaring races that have been encountered on other planets, one of which has a very distinct cracked face look. One of them looks kind of like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as a Star Trek race, and the other one looks functionally identical to humans. And then you have the fourth one, which is also functionally identical to humans. Yeah, yeah. And the scary part, the part about this that gets wildest, is that those are all from TOS. All of those races had their origin in TOS. Anyways, I'll explain more about those later. So, Rigel 2. We don't know if these are supposed to be Rigelians or humans. We don't know if Rigel 2 is a class M planet. The Star Trek's book calls it a class M planet, but it says that about most of the planets in the Rigel system. How do you have 12 class M planets in one system? Or even six? Six is kind of pushing the concept. Unless they're going with the idea that Rigel is a complex multi-star system, and that each of these planets is orbiting a different star or something, maybe. that could be an explanation. I don't know. We don't have a map. We don't have a picture of what the system as a whole looks like. We just have points on a star chart. That's it. Yeah, castle on Rigel VII, a colony on Rigel X, a different colony on Rigel 12. Blah. Anyways, so there is a different problem that comes up here, though, and one that is actually quite interesting from a world building perspective, and that is Beta Rigel. It's apparently a different solar system that often gets confused uh, in and out of universe for the actual Rigel system. And it's not clear how many mentions of Rigel are actually talking about the other Rigel system or Beta Rigel. And as you can see, there is a discussion on the wiki about whether or not Beta Rigel is actually a different solar system from Rigel. And we have no reason to believe that Beta Rigel is actually the same thing. It gets used in exactly the same way. But from an in universe perspective, it is apparently a different solar system, and we don't actually know how many mentions of Rigel are actually Beta Rigel and not the first one. Also, given what we know about both Beta Rigel and Rigel proper, they're probably adjacent solar systems. And also, these two women that you see McCoy with in this picture are seemingly, even if they are from Beta Rigel, and they might be, um, if some of these planets are actually from the Beta Rigel system, that would explain why you have so many Class M planets that are from a Rigel system because of the fact that it's actually not the same solar system. And so, yeah, that kind of makes things a bit easier. Also, some of the planets mentioned here are habitable in the same way that Mars is habitable. You can build colonies there. You can do mining operations there. Can you wander around outdoors in a t-shirt and shorts while picking daisies? Hell no. Anyways, um, yeah, I'll get back to that later. So the Beta Rigel problem. Um, Due to ambiguities, you could retcon several of these as being Beta Rigel, and the whole Rigel II thing with these girls on the Shirley planet w- has been treated as being Beta Rigel in the Star Charts book. Not technically canon, but it is authoritative when not contradicted by canon, I guess you could say. Anyways, so let's move on to the next one. Anyway, Rigel 3. Now, this is another one that's interesting because the fact that it's kind of sort of hand waved as something that exists, but we know so little about Rigel 3 that you're basically free to do whatever the heck you want with it. However, as I mentioned before, the idea of having a whole bunch of Class M worlds in the same solar system sounds ridiculous. And the bits of information that we have about Rigel 3, and note, technically it doesn't actually say in the episode that it was Leia Brahms. Whatever. Anyway, though, it says that they lived on Rigel 3. It doesn't say anything about what they lived in. It's entirely possible that it's a domed colony. We don't know. Or it could be that when I said they lived at Rigel 3, they're it's an orbiting space station, even. Star Trek does that a lot. It could be a completely uninhabitable world that has a research station in orbit, and that's why LaForge was there. Is that he was doing, engineering research in an orbital space station that happened to be at Rigel 3. Could be. Again, so little information about this would exist. But there is one tidbit that is interesting, but something we don't fully have information about because it's incredibly fragmentary and kind of sort of barely exists. Now, this is a novel, so it is a lower degree of canonicity to the Star Charts book. So this is, if you feel like considering this canon, fine. If you don't, also fine. But the turtle people that I mentioned earlier are a race that is canonical. So, like, their existence is a matter of canon. They do exist. They are considered to be from a system named Rigel. That's literally as far as what we know goes about where they come from. However, there is one other thing that's interesting, and that is the fact that they are mentioned as having been um, the Federation did not make first contact with them. One of the other Rigelian races made first contact with them when when these guys were a pre-warp race. Yeah. Um, Interesting stuff. Oh, the idea of them having only one gender because they're like a semi-humanoid race is actually an amusing idea. Oh, right. This was also a book, the novel Tower of Babel. So again, it's technically not fully canon. So, if you want to do it differently, have fun with that. This is something that I would actually consider to be, um, it is a word of God level thing that it's a behind the scenes creator commentary that I would consider to be authoritative because there is no other official information and it is technically official information. Although this uh, says that there's supposed to be like two different subspecies of them, which doesn't actually conflict with what the other one said. Because, like, you know, single gender, same planet, yeah, whatever. Dimorphism that's not sexual dimorphism, it's just like two different subspecies. It works. Anyway, um, again, though, there's the question of where exactly these people actually come from. Is it the first Rigel system or is it Beta Rigel? We actually don't know. The idea that they actually come from Rigel III is not fully canon either. Yeah. Um, let's see here. Where exactly was that information coming from anyway? Oh yeah, that was the Tower of Babel book. Anyway, moving on. So, we have Rigel IV. This one is interesting because the fact that this is explicitly a class M planet, it does actually have people on it living there called the Hill People. More about them later. Mm. Um, it's not some place that gets used a lot, but this is the thing I was mentioning is that there's the traditional Rigelians with the like cracked skin faces. Uh, there are the turtle people who are sometimes referred to as Chelon, and there are this first group of fully humanoid Rigelians that just look like humans, realistically. We don't really know anything about this planet of Rigel 4 other than it's an Earth-like planet. Seriously. Um, Also, is this Rigel or Beta Rigel? I'm not actually 100% certain. It's probably the main Rigel system, probably. Anyway, so Rigel 4 natives. Like I said, they just look human. Now, if you were to use them, you could give them some sort of a quirk, like I don't know, like um things that if it was a human, you would assume that it was like a tattoo on their forehead, and but it's not, or something silly like that. Unlike the other two species, though, these are nearly indistinguishable from humans, so you wouldn't want to make them something weird. Like the Chelon, those are actually a very interesting race design that barely got used ever. Anyway, though, these guys, though, one of the things that we know about them canonically is that they've been living on other planets. Seriously, this guy was on Argelius. So, he was possessed by Red Jack and went and used a knife that was created on Rigel IV to kill people on Argelius. So, Rigel IV natives, interesting concept. Um, and also here's the guy himself, Hengist. Not really anything particularly interesting about him other than the fact that he was the uh, body of a serial killer. Then we have the Hill People. Now, we don't know much about the Hill People other than the fact that they're from Rigel 4. And as previously mentioned, the main body of the Rigel 4 natives are a warp capable civilization that we have seen in other solar systems. So it's possible that the Hill People is simply a cultural subgroup of that. The nature of the sole example of their technology is also something interesting. Yeah, it's a knife made out of a combination of Murinite, which the Starfleet Medical Reference Manual tries to say that Murinite is a transuranic element. I personally think that's stupid and that it should actually just be considered a kind of like a stone material because of the fact that Murinite was the handle of the dagger, not the metal blade. It was the handle. In real life, we do actually have people make daggers with handles that are in fact pieces of stone. Obviously, fr- frangibility is something that is a significant issue, so most kinds of stone are not considered suitable for being handles. This one is. So, whatever. Anyway, the other is Boridium. The Boridium thing is interesting because it's a transuranic element. It is explicitly radioactive, but it is also something durable enough that you can use it as part of making a knife blade. Okay, yeah, sure. It's sci-fi. Might as well. This is actually an element that has been used in multiple episodes and not just in the original series. It has also been in Enterprise, TOS, and TNG. So, hey, when you have the reason to use it, why not? Also, notably, the Federation are one of the races that is known to use this stuff as part of their technology. And as we have mentioned before, the Rigel system, both of them are considered to be Federation territory as of TNG. So the Federation has access to the Boridium mines on Rigel 4. So, definitely something you could use if appropriate. Now, Rigel 5. This is an interesting one because of the fact that, while there are things that are like, hey, we were here and we had people here, again, it's we don't ever see pictures of the surface. We don't know what the people living on it were living in. As previously mentioned about Rigel III, the way it's utilized in the story would be appropriate if it was a domed colony or orbital space station. And as previously mentioned multiple times, the idea of having 6 or 7 Class M planets in this solar system is absurd. Anyway, moving on. Now we have, oh yeah, there is that. I forgot that part. This is where the wrinkly or cracked face version of the Rigelians comes from. They're actually supposed to be from Rigel V. Yeah, that's the actual reason for having Rigel V be a uh actual proper Class M planet is that these guys live there. We don't know what the place looks like. Just that these guys come from there. Um, the interesting physiology these guys have would be something you could use as inspiration for life from the planet, though, because you know the whole like bifurcated spine thing is not something you see in most humanoids. Also, having a bifurcated spine like that would actually give you a sort of limited mobility because of the fact that you can't turn when you have a doubled spine. So these guys would presumably have a different manner of having their neck move than a normal humanoid. I would actually consider these guys to only be semi-humanoid due to these physical differences, and also the way they look is actually not a typical humanoid either. Um, these guys are the ones who are said to have been the race that gave the turtle people version of Rigelians the ability to do spaceflight. Why? Because these guys expanded throughout their solar system and Beta Rigel as well, apparently, without worrying about silly things like the Prime Directive. Why exactly the Federation adopted the principle of the Prime Directive, we are not entirely certain. But yeah, whatever. Anyway, there are these guys have been members of Federation politics for a long time. They're not one of the races that you see in uh, major events often. Probably because doing the makeup for them would be expensive, but canonically, they have been people who have been interacting with the Federation since Enterprise era. Again, Rigel is supposedly relatively close to Earth, so that tracks actually. And all sorts of things you can know in it. A lot of named characters, and they get name dropped a lot more than you actually get seen. Anyway, though, moving on. So, this one is the sixth planet, and this one is actually said to not have anyone living on it. Yeah, that's about all we know about it. Seriously, like it's been mentioned as a place that exists, and that's about it. And next up, Rigel VII. This is one of the ones that's actually very important. And because of the fact that this is where the Kalar live. The Kalar are the version of humanoid Rigelians who are not a spacefaring civilization. However, them being a non spacefaring civilization is in Strange New Worlds attributed to the Lotus Eaters effect, or whatever the heck they called it. And that it's a cursed planet where it's impossible for a civilization to develop properly because of the fact that the humanoids there are unable to do the sort of mental reasoning that is required to develop technology. Kind of horrible. Apparently, it's one of those things where it's like exposure to this weird form of radiation basically gives everyone amnesia. That's it. Obviously, there are ways to protect yourself from exposure to that radiation and thus, avoid the amnesia induction effect, which the people who were the took over the planet did, and yeah. This is also the one that got mentioned in TOS. We don't have much information from the cage about Rigel VII. This is that planet that Spock was on when he had a leg injury, which he still had in the cage. Now, the specific reason why a Federation starship would be doing an away mission to Rigel 7, I would say that the locals who are not living on Rigel 7 and are simply living in the same solar system were trying to figure out whatever the Lotus Eater effect is. Seems like a reasonable way of going with it. The because the fact that that story about Spock's leg was never actually written and just referenced, we only know a handful of bits of detail. It, however, has been mentioned quite a lot because the fact that due to being mentioned by name explicitly in the cage, it's one of those things that just gets name dropped all over the place. Although not actually seen. Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, Strange New Worlds is the only time we actually, like, properly saw it as far as I know. Like, the menagerie is, borrowing from The Cage and is basically just a rehash of what happened in The Cage. Among the Lotus Eaters is looking at it's basically a sequel to that unwritten story, uh, where, Kirk well, actually, not even Kirk, Pike and Spock went to Rigel 7, but among the Lotus Eaters doesn't actually show us that. It just shows us some of the fallout from it, which is, yeah, that's a way of telling the story, I suppose. Anyways, so the Kalar. Um, the Kalar are weird because the fact that it's explicit in the show that the reason they are a pre-warp civilization is that whole radiation making them have amnesia thing. Other than that, they're just regular humanoids. Boringly regular humanoids. Whether or not they are actually a different species from the other humanoid Rigelians that look essentially the same as humans is debatable. That is actually something that you could have a serious discussion about because the fact that we don't really have any hard evidence there. It is very possible that the other Rigelian races had tried uh, to relocate some of these people to a different planet, and that we don't know. Anyway, yeah, again, we only have scraps of information about these guys, and most of those are little more than mentioning they exist. Strange New Worlds is the only one that's actually an in-depth usage of them, and it's kind of sort of a retcon. And how exactly it fits with the other usages isn't clear. Anyway, though, but yeah, is if the cracked face version of Rigelians are the ones that uplifted the turtle people to being a warp capable civilization, it's possible they tried to do that with these guys too. And the whole like mass amnesia thing, it caused it to fail, at least for the ones that are actually living on Rigel VII. And, if some of them had been relocated to another planet, then those were, presumably not suffering from the amnesia effect. Yeah, lots of weird stuff there. Okay, Rigel 10. This again is one of those where I mentioned earlier where it's not a place that we actually have reason to believe is a class M planet. There is no reason to believe this is class M. It does have a surface trade complex on it, but we don't have reason to believe that the air outside that is actually, good to breathe, but it exists. Oh yeah. Also, like this is a solar system that was being menaced by the Doomsday machine, also known as the Planet Killer, and it is now realistically, if they hadn't stopped the Planet Killer before it got to the Rigel system, it would have destroyed every single one of them. So all 12 planets probably moved on to Beta Rigel. Maybe. Oh, yeah. Okay. You know what? It might have gone a different direction than moving towards Beta Rigel, but yeah, it says that the nearby star systems L370 and L374 had also been disintegrated, but given the fact that these have numbers and not names, tells me that they're kind of minor solar systems. Let's take a quick look. Yeah, it's just destroyed by planet killer, destroyed by planet killer. Oh, it didn't even destroy all of the planets. Huh? Interesting. Do. Two outer planets were consumed by fuel. Oh, right. This is the one. This is the system that it was destroyed inside. It hadn't finished this system. This one, 7 planets all destroyed by the planet killer. This doesn't say anything at all about it having uh population on it. So it could be one of those solar systems where people kind of sort of sometimes go there for mining stuff, and that's about it. That comes up a lot in Star Trek. It's like because like canonically, the United Federation of Planets has something like 10 solar systems for every race that lives in this federation. It's a lot because of the fact that like the United Federation of Planets is actually a sizable chunk of the galaxy, but the galaxy in real life has millions of stars in it. Like, like 1% of that is, well, a lot. Okay, anyway, so last up we have Rigel 12. It's just a mining colony. However, this is the mining colony where we have the Mud's women thing come up. But this actually tells us a lot about the planet is that it's a mining colony that has very few people on it. Also, they're mining lithium here, not lithium, real lithium. And it's explicitly known that this is a place where the people live in domes and not on the surface, unprotected from the elements and stuff. And that is it for the Rigel system. Oh yeah, also like there's some like asteroids and stuff and debris and whatever. But yeah, a place that has been referenced so many times in Star Trek history that is very difficult to make sense of all of the references. And the idea that there might be 4 different sentient species from the same solar system is kind of insane. I personally prefer the idea that the turtle people are actually from Beta Rigel and not from the original Rigel system because, it simplifies things. And seriously, though. And also, like, the idea that the 2 different kinds of humanoid, Rigelians are actually the same species. Again, that is something that logically works. If you, however, were doing your own story that you're writing using these things as a plot device, you don't really need to do it like that. You could, come up with your own explanation. But hey, you know what? Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this.